Thank you for watching this review of the Tops Knives Anywhere Last Resort tool. This is the XL05, one of several small fixed blade neck knives featured in the Anywhere Last Resort tool line produced by Tops Knives, made in the USA. This is a small, reliable, extra strong tool according to Tops Knives, and is designed to be carried as a neck knife or on a keychain, even around a steering column of a vehicle. The overall length of the knife is 5.5 inches, the blade length is 2.75 inches, and the blade steel thickness is right around 4.8 millimeters, or just over 3/16 of an inch. The knife weighs 3.5 ounces by itself, 4.3 ounces with the sheath, and comes in 1095 high carbon steel, which features a black traction coating. The edge is razor sharp right out of the box. I have cut some paper with it. It is very capable right out of the box, extremely sharp. And the stock of the steel is very thick, so you end up with a very much wedge-shaped cutting edge, and hopefully the edge will not be difficult to retain because of how thick and sturdy the stock of steel is. The black traction coating goes right down to the cutting edge, except for that mirror finish there. So we'll see how that stands up to sharpening and, of course, some wear and tear. Also, what's interesting about this knife is the circle that is cut out or skeletonized in the handle. The handle features these black micarta linen scales, and of course, the lanyard does come with the knife, just some simple, looks like shoestring type paracord lanyard there. This beaded chain that comes with the sheath is actually a little bit larger and more substantial than the beaded chain that you're used to seeing, but it still makes this awful noise, and I would say that most would probably opt for some type of paracord or leather cord alternative. The sheath is very sturdy. You can hear that nice solid plastic thunk. Basically those mounds inside the sheath retaining the blade around that skeletonized hole there right behind the cutting edge of the blade. And it does feature a bit of a weep hole and some slight gap there on the very end, so that if there was any moisture, it could come right out of the bottom of the sheath, which is nice. Overall, I'd have to say I'm very impressed with the overall design and the concept behind this particular fixed blade neck knife. I've been shopping for fixed blade knives, possibly neck knives. I've never opted to wear a neck knife as such, but as you may have seen in one of my other knife reviews, the Spyderco Always Ready knife was one of the first to change my mind about possibly carrying a knife around my neck, or at least having one that's designed to be worn as such. However, this knife is considerably more heavier, and that may deter some folks from wanting to wear it as a neck knife. It's slightly longer and certainly heavier, actually about twice as heavy as the Spyderco Always Ready knife. That being said, it still only weighs a few ounces, with the sheath included even. So as far as carrying it with you, wearing it on a hike or concealed, the weight may be noticeable, but it's not so heavy that you would be deterred from carrying it as a neck knife. The knife itself, having to be deployed out of the sheath, it does require some doing, but obviously blade retention is more important than at least in my opinion, than being able to deploy the knife in a millisecond. I would much rather have to give this knife some pull to get it out of the sheath than worry about it coming undone or falling out while I was jogging or hiking or simply moving around. So well done on the sheath design. The other thing I like about the sheath is that it lines up with the rest of the knife. You don't have a big, bulky monstrosity that a small knife fits into. The sheath itself has clean, simple lines, and features a hole large enough to get something larger in there if you don't prefer the beaded chain. Beyond that, it's just enough to cover up the cutting area of the blade, and it leaves the entire handle protruding. That snap back into the sheath is exactly what you want to feel and hear when purchasing or considering a neck knife. I can't tell you how many sheath knives I have that I've had to worry about falling out because the sheath is leather or doesn't feature a snap or won't go in a belt and simply doesn't retain the blade. That is not at all a problem with this knife. I would also say that the cost may be something to consider when shopping for a Tops knife. Tops knives are made in the USA, but there's nothing super special to write home about when it comes to 1095 steel. Even with the black traction coating, which I'm really not even sure I like necessarily. I can appreciate the design and the consideration for what it is. It certainly offers some protection against corrosion and wear. But I have plenty of knives that don't have that coating and they've lasted without rusting, most noticeably some H1 steel knives from Spyderco. However, I haven't seen any rust develop on this. I've had it for more than several weeks now, and there's no sign of rusting or corrosion. I live in an extremely damp environment here in Virginia. However, this blade is holding up. I have not put any oil on it. I have not since sharpened it. All I've done is made a few cuts into some paper cardboard and some whittling just for the sake of giving it a shot. However, this knife, for what it is certainly worth some consideration if you're interested in carrying a neck knife or if you're looking for a wearable knife that is small enough in size and capable enough as a tool that you would want to have it with you. I would say, at least when I'm carrying this knife, it's not around my neck. It's usually in my pocket, and I'll leave this beaded chain hanging out. I've kept it on there for as long as I have, simply because I thought, well, let me just give it a shot. I didn't have any paracord to use instead. I was going to use some leather cording, but I wanted to figure out whether or not this was something I could appreciate. You want a review for the beaded chain? Here it is. I don't like it. It makes too much noise. It's cheaply made. It could break very easily if there was any amount of pressure around the sheath itself. If I was pulling this around my neck, I could most likely break this. Of course, the knife would deploy from the sheath before that would happen, ideally, but I would still prefer something stronger and more durable and less noisy than this particular beaded chain. But for some reason, that's the industry standard. Maybe if they hear enough bad reviews of it, they'll change that. However, it's a cheap fix. I can't imagine why they would include paracord as a lanyard for the back of the knife, but not have it for the sheath. Anyway, that's my own personal preference. Obviously, everyone has theirs, especially when it comes to knives. I would say this knife meets each of the criteria that I set for myself when initially shopping for a short, fixed blade neck knife. It's under 6 inches overall. It features a tough, durable, single piece of steel. It is, to some extent, rust and corrosion resistant. And of course, it features a sturdy sheath that retains the blade. Overall, this is an excellent package, an excellent design, very capable, very handy, very easy to carry, and certainly you'll find no shortage of ways to use it in your everyday carry. The two things I would say detract from the total design or the overall package of this knife would be the quality of the steel. And for me, I've had no issues yet. However, I'm expecting to find that the 1095 steel, and even with the black traction coating, it may not hold up to similar scrutiny as some of the better quality steels that perhaps, or most definitely, feature more corrosion resistance and resistance to wear. The other we've already harped on is, of course, this beaded chain. go ahead and throw in some paracord on this nice, snappy, small sheath that retains the blade very well, and I am happy. I appreciate you watching this review of the Tops Knives Anywhere Last Resort Tool XL05. Thank you very much, and as always, enjoy your knives.